Hi, I'm Morgan.
And I'm Megan, twins and hosts of M&M Chat, a monthly podcast that brings together our many commonalities: motherhood, farm life, fitness, chasing our passions, and goal chat.
It is our goal to create a show that is positive, real, and fun. Now let's dive into this month's episode. Today our episode is called Breath of Fresh Air, and we are going to dive into all the things gardening and outside.
Yes, we are so excited for this episode. It just comes at a good time in the season, and people are starting to get outside, get that fresh air, and we are just looking forward to another episode. So, Morgan, what are we drinking today just to start us off?
I like to call this spring in a cup. That's the way I've been describing it lately, and it's a matcha tea with almond milk and sugar-free vanilla. This is the first year we've tried matcha teas. And last month we did our episode on spring into fitness, so we've been trying to lessen our caffeine a little bit, and it's just been a nice, refreshing spring drink, I feel like.
And matcha still has a little bit of caffeine in it, but it's less than coffee, and it also doesn't leave you feeling like jittery or you don't crash at the end of the day, so it's a nice switch up, nice change of pace.
Definitely.
So this episode is going to be a little bit of a different style. I'm actually going to be interviewing Morgan because she has a garden and I currently do not. And so we are going to have it be interview style where I will ask her questions. Of course I'll jump in too, but just kind of wanted to change it up a little bit. So Morgan, what are some of the reasons why someone would want to get outside, get that fresh air, and maybe start a garden?
Yes, so as we know, like when we were talking about getting outside a couple episodes ago, we talked about just the spring and the air and it's just a nice feeling to get outside and move your body but just have fresh air. So I feel like there are a few reasons why someone might want to start a garden. For me, the reason I wanted to start a garden is it was so therapeutic for me to get my hands in the soil and to watch something grow. I mean, today, everything we do is like instant gratification. We want things now,
Yes.
and we don't want to have to wait for things. And gardening is not one of those things. Like, you have to be patient, and it teaches you patience. And it's one of those practices where you watch from the seed all the way to harvest time, and it's really rewarding to be able to harvest something that you put all your time and energy into growing, and then reaping that end product and harvesting it, and either if it's a vegetable, cooking with it, or if it's a flower, putting it in vases. And so to me, it's like a really therapeutic practice of not only getting your hands in the soil, but then to also watch that plant from a tiny little seed or a seedling all the way to harvest time.
I think that's a good point. I do not currently have a garden, but I've considered having one just for those same kind of reasons, getting outside. It's similar to me as like meditation. It's kind of a calming sense. You get to walk with your hands, you're off of technology, off of your phone, you're getting outdoors, which sometimes we're so cooped up inside with our jobs these days. And so I just feel like that's some of the reasons why I would want to have a garden too. I would probably have a vegetable and a fruit garden, just because that's what I would be using. But Morgan, how would someone know what type of garden they should have?
Yeah, so, and to go back to some of the reasons why real quick, so Kelly is actually, she listens to our podcast, and
Shout out to Kelly.
She recommended us doing a garden podcast episode, and actually I was talking to her the other day, and she said that there's research showing that when you get your hands in the soil, it's really good for your like body connection to like peace and joy and
nature.
And so that was one thing I wanted to plug in there real fast. But then also to go to a few other reasons, like if you want to grow food for yourself and being able to can salsa or be able to freeze sweet corn, it's a great way to save money and to add nutritious food to your meals and your family dinners. And then also it's a great way to get your kids involved too, to get them outside and helping with the garden. So how someone would maybe go ahead about getting started is first you want to find your why. So some of the reasons we just mentioned might be one of your whys. So why do you want to start gardening? Because it is a lot of work, and so if you don't have a strong enough why, it will be easy to put it on the back burner, to forget about watering it, to not want to go out and weed it. So you really have to have an important why, and if your why is not strong enough, that's okay. You can go support the farmers markets or like the farm stands where they have it on by the soccer fields, and you can go buy local vegetables and fruits. So if your why is not strong enough, you could totally still get outside. And our podcast episode is called Breath of Fresh Air. So even if gardening is not your forte, maybe getting outside more to go on walks or to play soccer or baseball with your kids. Or
well, and I think that this episode really, like Morgan said, could be for even if you're not wanting to start a garden, like you can still get some tips and things out of here, because I am not sure if I'm really in the place right now to start a garden. I've considered it. Kyle just mentioned that maybe I could start selling some sweet corn. I don't know if I have the energy right now for that, having a 4-month-old, but like Morgan said, just still getting outside, and I can take Andrew to go pick out some produce from the stand, or I can go to Morgan's garden and help her. And so I really feel like this episode can be for all of us, and just have that reminder to be in nature and get your hands dirty. Right now in our accountability group for fitness and nutrition, I have a challenge coming up for May that is just getting outside, and that could be gardening, that could be putting new flowers in your flower bed, all of that.
Yes, exactly. And if you want to start small, if you're not sure how to get started, do a container garden. When we lived in our house in town, I had little pots in my windowsill of herbs. I had cilantro, chives, and basil.
That's a great idea.
So you could start with a little container garden. You could start with tomatoes in a bucket on your back patio, by your grill, something like that. So you can start small and ease your way into it. So that's my first tip, is to start small, find your why, figure out what you want to grow, why you want to grow it, how much time you have, and then your space. Maybe you have just a little bit of space, but you can plant. What's cool about vegetables and flowers and garden plants is that you can put a lot in a little bit of space. So we practice what is called high intensity flower production. So we grow over 2,000 plants in a quarter of an acre.
So I know how big Morgan's garden is, but when she puts it in numbers like that, that sounds like a lot.
Yes. So you can plant a lot in a little bit of space. So start small, and then the first year when I planted my garden, I only had like 5 different varieties of plants that I grew, because I wasn't sure their characteristics. I wasn't sure how much space they needed. I had to learn too. So I started off with just a handful of plants, and every year have grown from there.
Well, and I think that's everything in life when you're trying something new, is to start small. You don't have to jump like completely head over heels and like jump in and start it all right away, because then you're gonna get overwhelmed, you're gonna get burnt out, you might not be able to keep up with it, and you just like throw in the towel. So with anything in life, when you're starting something new, I think that's just a great tip, to start small, try it, and then you can always expand as you learn more about it, as you get more experience.
Yep, exactly. Good.
So Morgan, we talked a little bit about your focus is flowers, and you have grown a little bit of vegetables. You've grown that in the past. What varieties, like where do people get those seeds and the materials? Where can people go once they figure out the why and how much time they have and the space? Where do people go next?
Yes. So, like I mentioned, I started with like 5 different types of plants that I was growing, and like you said, Megan, I started with both flowers and vegetables. I wasn't really sure what route I wanted to go, so I started with tomatoes, some herbs, lettuce, onions, and then I grew sunflowers, zinnias, marigolds. And snapdragons. So I grew a handful of flowers that year as well. But I started with 3 rows, and I wanted to start by seed, because that's the cheapest way to grow plants, is by seed. You can buy a seed packet for $2.50 for 20 seeds. So it's an easy way if you want to decrease the amount that you're spending. But then if you want to start them inside, you can start them inside with a heat lamp or a grow light and a heat mat. Now, a lot of people will say you need a grow light, a specific grow light, but honestly, you can get away with using shop lights, and it's a lot cheaper, and it will do the job. So you just want the light. You want to use the heat mats for the heat.
Okay.
So you don't necessarily need a grow light. It will save you money if you just use a shop light and then a heat mat.
And I guess that makes sense because in my lessons at school, we grow wheat and some rye and alfalfa, and just any kind of light really helps them to germinate and to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that would make sense.
Yes. So, and then you also want to put a clear dome over those trays. It's kind of like a greenhouse. It will keep the moisture in until the seeds germinate, and then once they germinate, you take the clear dome off, and then you can keep the light close to the plants until the plant gets taller, because if you have the light way up high, then the plant is going to stretch to reach the light and it becomes a flimsier plant.
Oh, okay.
So that's another tip. But if that intimidates you to start by seed, you can definitely buy plugs or seedlings. So if you can go to your garden center and buy tomatoes that are already ready to be planted, and that will save you some time as well. If you're just now starting to think about putting a garden in for this year, that might be the route you want to go, is going and buying seedlings that are ready to be planted in the soil. You can go to your local garden center, so there's local garden centers in your area, or you can go to like a chain like Tyson's or Lowe's or Menards, or you can buy online. So I buy all of our seeds through johnnyseeds.com, and I've had really good luck with those seeds, and they have a variety of vegetables, fruits, and flowers.
So you said it's maybe getting a little late in the season to start by seeds, and so buying the small plants would be maybe the better route for this year. But in the future, if someone wants to start by seeds, when should they start?
Usually around spring break is when I start my seeds. That seems like it's a pretty safe date. Now,
so like mid-March?
Mid-March, yep. The spring for Iowa, so it depends on your zone too. So if you're listening to this and you're not from Iowa, look at your zone and how your length of your growing season. So in Iowa, our growing season was zone 5, and our growing season is if you have spring cool loving plants, you can usually get them in the ground right when the soil is able to be worked, which is like the end of April, May, the beginning of May. But the safe date to plant for the frost-free date, I usually say like around Mother's Day is usually the safe date. Now, it's been a little bit colder the last couple years, and last year I had to cover all of my plants with protective covering because of the frost, so we might still get a late frost. So you have to be careful and just watch the weather and see when it's safe to plant them in your garden. But some plants are cool-loving plants, like radishes and things like that, can grow pretty well when it's chilly outside. So some of those you can start as soon as the soil can be worked. So the seed packets, if you start by seeds, they will have, and even your seedlings you buy, they will have a little tag with them that says what you need to provide, how much sun they need, how much shade they need, and how much water they like to receive. So that way it gives you some tips on how to care for those plants if you've never grown it before.
And I know I'm guilty of actually not looking at that tag very well, so that is a great just tip to throw in, because there's been times when I've had plants and just flowers in pots outside my house, and I don't know why they're not doing very well, or they start off doing well and then they kind of dry up and burn out, and I'm like, I'm giving them enough water, but maybe they're getting too much sunlight, or maybe they like a little less water. So it's really important to look at that. And since Morgan has started her own garden and kind of told me these tips and tricks, I try to look at that tag a little bit better than I used to.
Yeah, for sure.
So in what ways do you get your family involved? Because we talked about the importance of getting fresh air for our mental health, our overall health. Just it's good for us to get our hands dirty and have that connection to nature. So we want to instill these habits into our kids as well, and not always being inside. So how do we get our families involved? How do you get like Dean involved now?
So Dean has been coming out to the garden since he was in my stomach. He has been with us along the whole way, and the whole summer he is with us for checking the garden, weeding the garden, harvesting. Now occasionally, like this weekend, we're hoping to get all of our weed fabric and drip irrigation down. So he will go to Grandma's house this weekend. So if we're spending a whole day working on something, I'll usually have someone watch him. But he is very interested in the garden and just being on the farm in general. So I just make sure to have a bag of supplies that I'll need for him. So sunscreen, a hat, bug spray, long sleeves if it's going to be hot outside to protect him, like a light long sleeve short so that he won't get sunburnt. If we're going to have him in the garden, what shoes will he be wearing? So I make sure I have all of that prepared. I also bring lots of snacks, lots of water, so that way he has everything that he needs. And we bring a stroller. This summer, I'm actually curious to see how this summer is going to be different compared to last summer, because last summer he couldn't walk. So I would put him in the carrier on my chest. I would put him in the stroller. We had a little pack and play that had a big umbrella over it. We would put him in that sometimes. Sometimes we just lay him on a blanket next to the garden. And so I'm curious to see now this year that he can walk, how it will change. And I think he's more interested in the cows right now than the flowers. The other day we were in the yard and I found some dandelions and I said, Dean, pick the dandelion. He picked it and threw it. So I don't know, maybe harvesting this year might not be as easy with a 1-year-old. But I'm really, I want to actually, as he gets older, I wouldn't mind having a little section of the garden that's dedicated to him, like growing what he wants to grow, picking out what he wants to grow, like what seeds he wants, and have a little space that he's in charge of and that he can take pride in. So that's kind of where we're heading, but I just try to make it as fun as possible and as stress-free as possible and try not to get too worked up about different things. And Tyler and I divide and conquer a lot, so if I need to harvest and I need to do it when we're out on the farm and I need to pick a lot of flowers, then Tyler will take him in the tractor, or he'll go on a four-wheeler ride with him, or they'll play fetch with Diesel. And then if Tyler needs to do something on the farm, then we'll switch. So we just try to work hard being a team and dividing and conquering and getting everything done.
Yeah, that's really good. And Morgan mentioned like the things that you need for a child, like coverings, hats, sunscreen, snacks, all of those. But don't also forget it for yourself too, because I remember when Morgan first started her garden and she put sunscreen on, but she went out and she was outside for a good chunk of the day and came back in and was fried and did not realize how burnt she got. So that's just in general, you want to make sure you're protecting your skin while you're outside. When I mow the yard, we have about 3 acres that I mow around my house. So that's another reason why I have not jumped into the garden bandwagon yet, is because every week I am spending about 3 hours outside just mowing my yard. But I guess if I started gardening, then there'd be less mowing. And so that's just something to remember when you're outside a long time, is to put on that sunscreen or put on a sun hat or something.
I actually was just gonna say I want to get a really cute, because if you buy something cute, you're more likely to wear it. So I want to buy cute garden shoes, because a lot of times I'm wearing my Adidas slip-on shoes, or tennis shoes, which are
then
not,
the soil gets inside.
Yeah, they're not the best garden shoes. And so I want to get some cute garden shoes, and I also have a tool belt that I like to wear to put my snippers in, especially with kids and stuff. If I'm holding Dean, instead of having to hold all of my other stuff, I have a little tool belt. And then I also put together a toolbox this year. But I want to get a really cute sun hat.
Yeah, and those are popular right now, I feel like, too.
Yeah.
I've been seeing them on Instagram, just different sun hats or like beach hats. Andrew just got a cute little like fishing hat for Easter, and it says his name on it, and you got a baseball cap that says his name on it. He's a little small yet, he'll have to grow into it, but he'll be wearing that for sure this summer. It'll be cute.
Yes.
Okay, so my next question is, what kind of tips and tricks, just to wrap it up, do you have for us as we kind of start thinking about if we want to grow a garden or not?
Yes, so I have a few tips I wanted to mention. The first one I wanted to say was weed. And I know that seems like common sense. When you have a garden, you have to weed it, but weeding is the thing that always gets ahead of me. It's probably the easiest but most difficult job of having a garden, and
even with weed fabric.
So we use weed fabric, and we bought holes in the weed fabric. So we bought strong, durable weed fabric, and then we used a template to bore holes into it. And with garden vegetables, you have to see what plant size, how big it gets. With the flowers, they stay pretty consistent for my annuals. So if you want to go that route, you have to make the holes depending on the plant size. But that does control a lot of the weeds, and year after year our garden's getting better because of putting that weed fabric down. The seeds don't have light to germinate. But the grass can still grow up around the plant. So my recommendation is to weed when the plant is just starting off. That way, if the weeds get ahead of your plant that you put in the ground, it's almost impossible to get ahead of it because it will suffocate your plant. So you have to get ahead of it right away. And you can weed with like tools like a garden hoe, but a lot of times I just end up picking it with my hand, and it's a pretty laborious job, but it definitely is going to be better to do it up front than have to do it later on when the weeds are really big.
Well, and I feel like weeding, you said it's laborious, which it is, and it takes a little bit of time. But I feel like it's kind of like when I mow, I listen to different podcasts, I listen to music. It's kind of my quiet time. I've heard people also say that weeding is that for them. It's therapeutic. It's just kind of mindless work. You're pulling out the weeds, but it's something that needs to be done, and so you get a little bit of time to yourself. So funny story, Morgan asked me to help with the garden last summer because, I mean, I was pregnant at the time, but I am a teacher, so I have summers off. So I asked her, I said, is there anything that I can do to help? And she said, sure, if you want to go weed the garden. You kind of have to know ahead of time too what you're looking for, because when plants are just starting off, it can be kind of hard to determine what's a weed and what's a plant. So just kind of know going into that so that you're careful and you don't actually pick the plant. Morgan said that I did fine, but I'm like, did I really? So hopefully I didn't pick all the plants that she was trying to grow. But.
No, you did great. And having support and having family and friends to help, like I would not be able to do what I do with the flowers and the size that I grow without help and support. And so yeah, like this tomorrow we have some friends coming over, and when we do a whole day of because with the flowers, so if you're starting small, I don't want to intimidate you with
too much work.
Yeah, because remember I said I started with 3 small rows, and now I'm up to what I said, 2,000 plants. So,
and you said, Morgan, you told me earlier that's your 5th year doing the garden,
yeah, it's
so
my
she's
5th
grown
year, but it's only
years.
my 2nd year selling flowers. So, is it my 3rd year selling flowers? It's my 2nd year selling for CSA and farmers markets. The year before that, I did a few for family.
Yeah, and if someone had requested one.
Yeah. So this is my 2nd official year selling flowers. Yes. So what were we chatting about?
So with
we went on a tangent. So my 2nd tip would be compost. If you have access to compost, so if you either know of someone who has maybe manure from livestock, or if you are able to or you could compost yourself with scraps from my grandma always had a scrap pile out by the trees where she would put tomatoes, eggshells, anything that she had from the kitchen that could be composted, she would go put it in that pile outside. So if you have a compost bin, that's a great way to add fertilizer to your garden without spending money on fertilizer. It's a natural way as well. And then also you can buy compost tea bags, or you can make your own compost tea, but we haven't ventured into that yet, maybe one day. But you can buy compost tea bags, which is literally a brew of compost tea, like you would make into a pitcher of iced tea. and you put it in a watering can, and then you sprinkle it on your plants. And it's a way to keep pests away, and it also is a fertilizer booster.
Oh, that's good to know.
So that would be my tip. This year we had the best compost we've ever made. It was a mixture of cow manure, corn stalks, and hay, and you let it compost and sit for a year, and then you put it on your garden, and it literally looked like potting soil.
So Morgan posted this in her story about her compost pile, and on Instagram. I got a kick out of it. It made me smile because she was like, "Guys, look at my compost pile," and I'm just sitting here laughing because I'm like, she's so excited about her compost.
And
pile.
like my hand was in it, and I'm like, "Look at guys, it's like not even poop anymore."
So you said weeding, compost, and then do you have any other final tips?
Yeah, my last tip is for harvest. So look at your plant that you're growing, and if it's a vegetable or a fruit or if it's a flower, check to see if it's a one-time wonder, if it's a medium producer, or if it is a abundant giver. So a one-time hit wonder it's like my sunflowers that I grow, my pro-cut stem sunflowers. One bloom, that's all I get from them. The medium producers have a good amount, and then the ones that keep on giving, the more you harvest them, the more they will give you. So tomatoes are that way, cucumbers are that way, zinnias, my flowers, marigolds. The more you harvest, the more they give. So they want to complete their life cycle, and if you're harvesting the flower, then that means that they aren't able to give seeds. So they're not able to release seeds out for the next generation, essentially. So if you harvest them, then they're going to push out another flower to be able to seed out. As soon as you have flowers that are starting to seed out, they will complete their life cycle, and they will start to wrap up for the year. So that's my tip. And also harvest when they are, check to see when you should be harvesting, how ripe the tomato should be, or the pepper, or the flower. If it's a zinnia, you want to let it open completely because it's not going to open up by itself. But something like tulips, you don't want them to completely open up because then they won't last as long in the vase.
Oh, okay. That's good to know too.
Yeah.
And then also, Morgan mentioned that the more that you harvest it, the more that you're going to get for some of the plants, whether it be produce or flowers. So that is something too that you can consider with a garden, is if you want to have it just be fresh produce throughout the season, or if you want to can it, or if you want to freeze sweet corn if you have any corn in the garden, or you could do salsa. So I know my papa does a lot of canning. He'll do salsa, and he'll make spaghetti sauce and just different things that he has throughout the year. So that's something to consider too with a garden. And then that's also where you can get family involved, and everybody's here pitching in as we cut the corn off the cob and we freeze it and put it into bags and stuff like that.
Yes, I was listening to another podcast earlier this week that was on Gardening 101, and they were talking about what they do for their garden season. And they talked a lot about different recipes and different things you can make with your fresh fruits and vegetables. So it was just kind of inspiring to hear some different ways that people use the fresh fruits and vegetables from their garden and how they incorporate that.
Yeah, so let us know if you have a garden and what you do for yours and how big it is, and do you can or freeze things. Also, we love that this was a request from a listener. So if you have a request that you want us to do an episode on, please let us know, because we will definitely consider that. And also, we have an exciting episode coming up this summer that we're excited about. We are actually going to be collaborating with another person that we met through Instagram. She is called Farm Wife Drinks.
Yep.
And so stay tuned for that episode coming up. What that one will look like is we will be trying some of her recipes and kind of doing a taste test, and then just kind of seeing a little bit more what kind of things we like and drinks and just.
And we might just
recipes.
do some go chat. So join us for a casual conversation that day, and we'll just see where the day or the episode takes us. Actually, right now, I think I hear Dean starting to wake up from his nap. The boys actually walked out. We had lunch, and both boys were napping, and I think he's just waking up, so it was perfect timing. But the day that we do the drink taste tests for the different recipes. We might have to have the dads watch
Yeah.
them.
Yes, that will be like goal time, sister
Yeah.
time. So
Maybe we should invite a few friends over.
oh, that would be
That'd be fun.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys will have to check in later, find out what that episode ends up being like.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for tuning in. Like, subscribe, share us with your friends. We would love if we got the word out.
Yes. Thank you.